They say keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But what do you do when you don't realize someone is your enemy until they've already sharpened the knife? Let me tell you about Nina Brooks, my former colleague, my workplace saboteur, and eventually, my direct report. When I first joined DataFlow Solutions as a senior strategy analyst, Nina was one of the first people to welcome me to the team. She had been there for 3 years, working her way up from an entry-level coordinator role to senior operations specialist. We grabbed coffee, she showed me the ropes, and I genuinely thought we were becoming friends. Our team was small but mighty, 8 people total under Craig Henson, a competent but conflict-averse team lead who preferred spreadsheets to confrontation. We handled strategic analysis for mid-market clients, helping them optimize their supply chain operations. It was the kind of work that required both analytical precision and creative problem-solving, which suited me perfectly. Nina and I worked well together initially. She had institutional knowledge, I brought fresh perspectives and a background in logistics optimization that complemented the team's existing skill set. For the first 6 months, everything was smooth sailing. Then something shifted. It started so subtly I almost missed it. During our weekly strategy meetings, Nina began inserting what I can only describe as surgical strikes disguised as supportive comments. Riley's ideas are always so creative, she'd say with a warm smile, sometimes maybe a little too outside the box for what the client actually needs. Or, I love Riley's enthusiasm for these complex solutions. I just worry about implementation timelines. You know how clients get when things run over budget. The comments were always delivered with a concerned, helpful tone that made them impossible to challenge without looking defensive. But I started noticing a pattern. Every suggestion I made was followed by Nina's gentle redirect toward something more practical or client-friendly. Craig, bless his heart, had a habit of furiously taking notes during these meetings but rarely intervening in team dynamics. He valued harmony over everything else, which Nina seemed to understand instinctively. By month 8, I noticed my project assignments were mysteriously shrinking. Tasks I'd been handling were gradually migrating to Nina's plate. "Oh, I already started working on the Morrison account analysis," she'd announced casually. Riley looked swamped, so I figured I'd jump in. Nina saved us on the Peterson deliverable, she'd mentioned to Craig after completing work I hadn't even known needed saving. The most insidious part was how she positioned herself as my protector while actively undermining me. "I've got Riley's back," she'd tell other team members. "She's still learning our client base." Still learning? I had an MBA in supply chain management and 5 years of consulting experience. But Nina had been at DataFlow longer, and institutional knowledge carries weight in corporate environments. I started paying closer attention to office dynamics and realized Nina had cultivated relationships throughout the company that I was only beginning to build. She knew which executives preferred detailed reports versus high-level summaries. She understood the unspoken politics between departments. She had coffee dates with people from finance, friendly chats with IT, and somehow always seemed to know about organizational changes before they were officially announced. Meanwhile, I was focused on doing excellent work and assuming that would speak for itself. Classic mistake. Around month 9, I overheard a conversation that made everything click into place. I was staying late to finish a client presentation when I heard Nina talking to Jessica from HR near the kitchen area. They didn't see me in the conference room with the lights dimmed. "I think Maya is finally going to post that team operations lead position," Nina was saying. Maya Elridge was our department director, sharp, results-driven, and notoriously hard to impress. "You'd be perfect for that role," Jessica replied. "You know this place inside and out." "I hope so. There might be some competition, but I've been positioning myself for months. Some of the newer team members are brilliant, but they don't understand our culture yet." My blood ran cold. The team operations lead role was something I'd been quietly considering myself, a natural next step that would mean managing a team of specialists and working directly with C-level clients. I hadn't realized it was close to being posted, much less that Nina had been positioning herself for months. That phrase haunted me, positioning herself for months. Not improving her skills or taking on additional responsibilities, but positioning. It was pure corporate strategy, and I'd been the unwitting target. Once I understood what was happening, I began observing Nina's tactics with the fascination of an anthropologist studying a particularly clever predator. Her approach was surgical. She never criticized me directly or said anything that could be reported to HR. Instead, she used a combination of subtle techniques. The helpful correction, "Actually, Riley, the Morrison client prefers quarterly reports, not monthly. I know that's different from what you might be used to. The protective intervention. Let me handle the Peterson call today. I know they can be particular about communication style. The concerned colleague. Is everything okay with Riley? She seems overwhelmed lately. The competence signaling. Always having the answer when I didn't, always knowing the client preference I hadn't memorized, always being one step ahead in team discussions. What made it particularly brilliant was how she weaponized my own competence against me. When I'd suggest innovative approaches, she'd position them as impractical. When I'd ask clarifying questions, she'd frame it as confusion rather than thoroughness. She was rewriting the narrative of my professional persona from brilliant strategist to creative but scattered, from thoughtful analyst to needs guidance. And it was working. The breaking point came during a quarterly review presentation to the executive team. We'd been working on a comprehensive analysis of supply chain vulnerabilities for one of our largest clients, work that would directly influence a potential contract renewal worth $2.3 million annually. I'd spent weeks developing a predictive model that could identify bottleneck risks before they impacted delivery schedules. It was complex work that required both statistical modeling and deep industry knowledge, exactly the kind of high-impact analysis that would showcase strategic thinking. The presentation was scheduled for Wednesday morning. Maya would be there, along with the CEO and VP of Client Relations. It was the kind of visibility that could make a career. Tuesday evening, Nina approached my desk with what appeared to be friendly concern. Riley, I was reviewing tomorrow's presentation, and I'm a little worried about the complexity level. You know how executives prefer digestible insights over detailed methodology. I think the model results speak for themselves, I replied, not looking up from my laptop. Of course. It's brilliant work. I just wonder if we should have a backup version, something more streamlined, just in case they want to focus on actionable recommendations rather than statistical analysis. She was doing it again, complimenting my work while simultaneously undermining confidence in it. But this time, I was ready. That's thoughtful of you, Nina, but I'm confident in the presentation structure. The methodology is crucial for establishing credibility. She smiled that helpful smile. Absolutely. I just care about our team looking good tomorrow. Wednesday morning arrived, and I felt prepared. My presentation was polished, my insights were solid, and the potential impact was clear. Then Nina struck with precision that would have impressed Sun Tzu. 5 minutes into my presentation, she interrupted, Riley, can you clarify the confidence intervals on slide 7? I want to make sure we're not overstating the predictive accuracy. I paused, thrown off. The confidence intervals were clearly labeled, but her question implied they weren't. The 95% confidence interval is shown in the shaded region, I replied, clicking back to the slide. Right, but for the executive team's understanding, Maya, should we explain what that means in practical terms? Maya raised an eyebrow. The implication was clear, Riley uses jargon that needs translation. 3 slides later, Nina interrupted again. This is fascinating analysis, Riley. I'm wondering if we should also present the alternative scenario we discussed, the more conservative projections. There had been no alternative scenario. There had been no discussion. But Nina delivered the comment with such confident collegiality that it sounded like established context I was somehow forgetting. By the 4th interruption, I watched Maya's expression shift from interest to concern. Not concern about our findings, but concern about our team dynamic. About my ability to handle questions under pressure. About whether I was prepared for senior-level interactions. The presentation that should have established my expertise instead became a showcase of Nina's ability to manage and guide me through complex material. After the meeting, Craig pulled me aside. Riley, I wanted to check in. You seemed a bit flustered today. Are you feeling okay about the workload? We can redistribute some responsibilities if you're feeling overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. The word Nina had been seeding for months. I'm not overwhelmed, Craig. I was prepared for that presentation. Of course. It's just, Maya mentioned that team dynamics seemed a bit off. Maybe we should think about better coordination before the next executive review. I realized with crystalline clarity that I was being managed out. Not fired, DataFlow was too smart for that. But marginalized, repositioned, diminished until leaving would seem like the logical choice. That night, I went home and opened a bottle of wine. Not to drown my sorrows, but to think. Nina had played a masterful game, but she'd made one crucial error. She'd assumed I wouldn't figure it out. The next morning, I walked into the office with a new perspective. If Nina wanted to play corporate chess, I'd give her a game worth winning. But first, I needed intelligence. I started paying attention to things I'd previously ignored. Office gossip, departmental politics, upcoming organisational changes. I scheduled coffee meetings with people from other teams, not to complain about Nina, but to understand how DataFlow really operated. From Marcus in finance, I learned that Maya was under pressure to show departmental growth and was particularly interested in initiatives that could scale across multiple client segments. From Janet in business development, I discovered that our biggest competitors were winning contracts by offering predictive analytics services we didn't currently provide. From Tom in IT, I found out that the company was planning a major technology upgrade that would require someone to lead cross-functional implementation teams. Most importantly, from my casual conversations with Maya herself during our monthly skip-level meetings, I learned that she valued what she called strategic thinking at scale, the ability to see patterns across the entire business, not just individual client accounts. Armed with this information, I began my counteroffensive. First, I started documenting everything. Not to build an HR case against Nina, that would be defensive and potentially career-limiting. Instead, I began creating an evidence trail of my own competence and contributions. Every client interaction got a detailed email summary sent to Craig and Maya. Every analysis included clear methodology notes and business impact projections. Every team meeting resulted in action items with my name attached to specific deliverables. I also began what I privately called competence broadcasting, finding natural ways to demonstrate expertise that Nina couldn't interrupt or reframe. When our Morrison client mentioned supply chain challenges during a routine check-in call, I offered to develop a quick diagnostic tool. Within a week, I'd created an interactive dashboard that identified $300,000 in potential annual savings. I shared the results with the client directly, copying Maya and our VP of Client Relations. When Peterson Industries asked about emerging trends in their sector, I wrote a comprehensive industry brief that became the template for our team's quarterly client communications. Maya forwarded it to 3 other department heads as an example of the kind of strategic thinking that differentiates us. Nina couldn't undermine work that spoke for itself, especially when clients were responding positively. The real breakthrough came when I learned about DataFlow's plans to expand into the healthcare supply chain market. It was a complex sector with regulatory requirements and specialized logistics needs, exactly the kind of challenge that excited me. No one had been assigned to research the healthcare opportunity yet. It was sitting in Maya's strategic planning folder as a future consideration. I approached her during one of our skip-level meetings. Maya, I've been thinking about the healthcare expansion possibility. I have some background in regulatory compliance from my previous role, and I'd be interested in developing a preliminary market analysis. Nothing formal, just exploring whether there's a viable opportunity. Her eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of initiative thinking I like to see. How much time would you need? I could have something preliminary in 3 weeks, comprehensive analysis in 6. Do it. And Riley, this stays between us until you have something concrete to present. Perfect. A high-visibility project that Nina didn't even know existed. For the next month and a half, I worked evenings and weekends on what would become DataFlow's healthcare supply chain strategy. I researched regulatory requirements, analyzed competitor offerings, identified potential clients, and developed financial projections. More importantly, I reached out to my professional network, former colleagues who'd moved into healthcare operations, industry contacts from my MBA program, consultants who specialized in regulatory compliance. I was building expertise and relationships that no one else at DataFlow possessed. The final presentation was 47 slides of market analysis, competitive positioning, regulatory frameworks, and financial projections that painted a picture of a $12 million annual revenue opportunity within 3 years. Maya didn't just approve the healthcare initiative, she asked me to lead it. While I was quietly building my healthcare expertise, Nina was having her own challenges. Taking on additional responsibilities to position herself for promotion meant she was now managing accounts she didn't fully understand, making promises to clients she couldn't deliver on, and trying to juggle too many priorities simultaneously. The Morton Industries account, one she'd specifically taken from me, was struggling. Their supply chain optimization wasn't delivering the projected savings, and they were asking pointed questions about methodology and implementation timelines. The Bradford Group contract, another she'd insisted on managing, was 3 weeks behind schedule because Nina had underestimated the complexity of their multi-facility logistics network. Meanwhile, Craig was getting increasingly uncomfortable with team dynamics. Nina's subtle undermining tactics had created tension that even he couldn't ignore anymore. During our weekly team meeting in late March, Nina made another one of her helpful comments about my work style. But this time, Craig interrupted her. "Nina, I think Riley can speak for herself about project timelines." It was a small moment, but significant. The tide was turning. In early April, Maya called me into her office for what I assumed would be a routine check-in about the healthcare project. Instead, she had a different conversation in mind. "Riley, I want to talk to you about career development. You've been doing excellent work. The healthcare analysis in particular shows exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need more of here." "Thank you. I've enjoyed diving into new challenges." "I'm going to be direct. We're creating a new role, Division Program Manager. It would mean overseeing strategic initiatives across multiple client segments, managing a team of analysts, and working directly with our C-level clients on expansion opportunities." My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds like an exciting opportunity. The role would be 2 levels above your current position, with corresponding compensation and equity. But more importantly, it would put you on a direct path to department leadership within 2 years. Division Program Manager. 2 levels above my current role, and 3 levels above Nina's position. I'd be very interested in discussing it further." Maya smiled. "I hoped you'd say that. The healthcare initiative convinced me that you can think beyond individual projects to systemic opportunities. That's rare." She leaned forward. "Between us, this role was partially created because I need someone who can see the bigger picture without getting bogged down in office politics. Someone who focuses on results rather than positioning." The word positioning hung in the air between us. Did Maya know about Nina's tactics? Had she been watching the team dynamics more carefully than anyone realized? "When would you like to move forward with this?" I asked. "Immediately. I'll have HR draft the official job posting, but I'm offering it to you first. If you're interested, we can skip the external search process." I maintained my professional composure, but internally, I was calculating the beautiful irony of the situation. While Nina had been undermining me to position herself for a team operations lead role, I was being offered a position that would make me her manager. "Maya, I appreciate the confidence you're showing in me." "Yes, I'm very interested." "Excellent. Let's plan for you to transition into the role by the beginning of May. That gives us time to restructure the team and communicate the changes." As I walked back to my desk, I caught Nina watching me with curious eyes. She'd noticed the closed-door meeting with Maya but couldn't have imagined its content. Maya announced the organisational changes during our Monday morning all-hands meeting. The news came in layers, first the healthcare expansion initiative, then the new division program manager role, then my appointment to that position. I watched Nina's face carefully during the announcement. The progression of emotions was fascinating: confusion, surprise, realization, and finally, a carefully controlled mask of professional congratulation. "Riley, congratulations," she said after the meeting, extending her hand with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is unexpected news." "Thank you, Nina. I'm looking forward to working with everyone in this new capacity." The handshake lasted a beat too long, both of us understanding that the entire dynamic had shifted in a way neither of us had anticipated 3 weeks earlier. Craig approached us both, looking relieved that the team restructuring might resolve some of the tension he'd been struggling to manage. "Riley, I'm excited to see what you do with this opportunity. Nina, I think this reorganization will help clarify everyone's responsibilities moving forward." Indeed it would. The following week, I had my first official one-on-one meeting with Nina as her manager. I'd spent considerable time thinking about how to handle this conversation, how to be professional without being vindictive, authoritative without being petty. Nina arrived precisely on time, which I appreciated. Whatever else had happened between us, she understood the importance of adapting to new organizational realities. "Nina, I want to start by acknowledging that this transition might feel awkward given our previous working relationship. I hope we can move forward professionally and focus on what's best for our team and our clients." She nodded carefully. "Of course. I'm committed to making this work." "Good. I've been reviewing everyone's current project loads and client relationships. I'd like to talk through your priorities and see where I can provide better support. For the next 30 minutes, we discussed her accounts, her challenges, and her professional development goals. I was scrupulously fair, focusing on work quality and client outcomes rather than past interpersonal issues. But I also set clear expectations. Going forward, I'd like all client communications to include me as a copy. Not because I don't trust your judgment, but because I need to maintain visibility into our overall client relationships. That makes sense. I'd also like us to implement weekly project status updates. Nothing elaborate, just a brief summary of progress, challenges, and next steps for each active account. Absolutely. She was agreeing to everything, but I could sense the adjustment she was making. Nina had operated with considerable autonomy for years, managing client relationships and project timelines according to her own judgment. Now she would be accountable to someone she'd spent months trying to undermine. The meeting concluded cordially, but we both understood the underlying reality. The power dynamic had been completely reversed, and there was no going back. Over the following months, I focused on being the kind of manager I'd always wanted to have, clear in expectations, supportive of professional development, and focused on results rather than politics. Nina, to her credit, adapted to the new structure with professionalism I genuinely respected. The accounts she'd been struggling with began improving under closer supervision and collaborative problem-solving. The Morton Industries optimization finally delivered its projected savings after I helped restructure their implementation timeline. The Bradford Group project caught up to schedule once we brought in additional analytical support. But the most interesting change was in team dynamics. Without the need to position herself competitively, Nina became a more collaborative colleague. Her institutional knowledge, when channeled productively rather than used as a weapon, proved valuable for onboarding new team members and maintaining client relationships. I never confronted her directly about the months of subtle undermining. There was no dramatic scene, no moment of vindication or revenge. Instead, I let our new working relationship speak for itself. During her quarterly review, I gave Nina honest feedback about her strengths and development areas. I recommended her for training opportunities that would genuinely advance her career. I advocated for her salary increase when the annual compensation reviews came around. Some might call this magnanimous. I prefer to think of it as strategic. The best way to manage someone who had tried to undermine me was to demonstrate that I was more focused on team success than personal vindication. 6 months into my new role, I was invited to present the healthcare expansion results to DataFlow's board of directors. It was the kind of visibility that could shape the trajectory of an entire career. The presentation went flawlessly. Our healthcare initiative had secured 3 major clients, generated $2.1 million in first-year revenue, and positioned DataFlow as a credible player in a lucrative market segment. The board approved expansion funding and asked me to develop similar strategic initiatives for 2 other industry verticals. After the presentation, as I walked back to the office, I passed the conference room where Nina was conducting a team meeting. She looked up through the glass wall and gave me a small nod, not quite a smile, but acknowledgement of professional respect. It struck me that this outcome was better than any revenge scenario I could have imagined. Rather than destroying Nina's career or publicly exposing her tactics, I'd simply outplayed her at a game I'd initially been too naive to realize we were playing. People often ask me if I planned this outcome from the beginning, if I somehow orchestrated Nina's downfall while positioning myself for promotion. The truth is more complex and, I think, more interesting. I didn't set out to get revenge on Nina. I set out to excel at my job despite the obstacles she was creating. I focused on building competence, demonstrating value, and understanding the broader organizational dynamics that would determine career advancement. Nina's mistake wasn't that she was ambitious. Ambition is healthy and necessary in corporate environments. Her mistake was assuming that undermining others was a viable long-term strategy for career advancement. While she was focused on repositioning my work and managing perceptions, I was focused on creating genuine value for clients and understanding what leadership really wanted from senior team members. While she was playing office politics, I was building expertise and relationships that would benefit the organization. The irony is that if Nina had channeled her strategic thinking and relationship-building skills toward collaborative success rather than competitive undermining, she likely would have been promoted alongside me rather than ending up as my direct report. Maya later told me that she'd been watching our team dynamics for months, trying to understand why there was tension despite everyone's individual competence. I realized that some people focus on climbing ladders, she said, while others focus on building ladders. I needed more ladder builders in leadership positions. Today, nearly a year after my promotion, our team is performing at the highest level in DataFlow's history. We've expanded into 3 new industry verticals, improved client retention rates by 23%, and developed predictive analytics capabilities that have become a competitive differentiator for the company. Nina has grown into one of my most reliable team members. She's taken on additional responsibilities, improved her project management skills, and built stronger client relationships. She's also stopped trying to undermine colleagues and started mentoring new team members, a transformation that benefits everyone. Sometimes during our weekly one-on-ones, I catch glimpses of the strategic intelligence she used to try to undermine me, now channeled toward collaborative problem-solving. It reminds me that workplace dynamics are rarely about good people versus bad people. They're usually about systems, incentives, and individual choices about how to pursue professional success. I've learned to appreciate Nina's institutional knowledge and relationship-building abilities while maintaining clear expectations about professional behavior. She's learned to channel her ambition toward value creation rather than political positioning. Our working relationship now is built on mutual respect and shared commitment to team success, a much stronger foundation than the false friendship that masked months of subtle warfare. If I were mentoring someone facing similar workplace challenges, I'd offer this advice. First, recognize competitive dynamics early. When someone consistently reframes your contributions or positions themselves as protective of you, pay attention. These may be positioning tactics rather than genuine concern. Second, focus on creating undeniable value. The best defense against office politics is excellent work that speaks for itself. Build expertise, deliver results, and maintain visibility with decision-makers. Third, understand the broader organizational context. What does leadership really value? What problems are they trying to solve? Position yourself as part of the solution rather than someone who needs to be managed. Fourth, build relationships strategically. Don't just network upward. Develop connections across the organization that give you perspective on how decisions get made and opportunities get created. Finally, play the long game. Sustainable career advancement comes from building competence and reputation over time, not from short-term tactical victories over colleagues. The most satisfying part of this entire experience isn't that Nina now reports to me. It's that I've built the kind of career trajectory I wanted while maintaining my professional integrity. I didn't have to become manipulative or vindictive to succeed. I just had to become more strategic about demonstrating my value and understanding how organizations really operate. Some people fight for positions. Others earn them. The difference, I've learned, determines not just whether you get promoted, but whether you deserve the promotion once you have it. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply being excellent at what you do. Riley James is now Director of Strategic Initiatives at DataFlow Solutions, overseeing expansion into 5 industry verticals and managing a team of 12 strategic analysts. Nina Brooks was promoted to Senior Operations Manager last month, leading implementation teams for the company's largest clients. They still have their weekly one-on-ones, though the dynamic has evolved considerably from those early days of subtle warfare and careful positioning. Looking back, Riley realizes that Nina's competitive tactics inadvertently made her a better strategic thinker, more aware of organizational dynamics, more focused on documenting her contributions, and more intentional about building relationships that support long-term career growth. Competition can be healthy, Riley reflects, as long as it pushes everyone toward excellence rather than toward undermining each other. The best workplace dynamics happen when people are competing to create the most value, not to diminish their colleagues. Maya Elridge was promoted to VP of Strategic Operations last quarter. She still credits the healthcare expansion initiative as the project that convinced her DataFlow could compete in complex, regulated industries. Riley saw an opportunity everyone else missed, she says. That's the kind of strategic thinking we need more of in leadership positions. Sometimes the most satisfying victories are the ones where everyone wins, they just don't all win equally.